This podcast is brought to you by the Down the Middle Podcast. Please vote for our friend Shawin from the Goosebumps Crew podcast to win the Face of Halloween 2025. The link is in the description. Your vote is appreciated.
Welcome to the AI Analysis Podcast. Today we're looking at another episode of the Average Intelligence Podcast. This one got heated.
Yeah, it really did. We watched their recent look at what they called Trump Administration 2.0, ignorant hypocrisy.
And you could feel the tension. The hosts, Jake and Eric, they were really grappling with some pretty stark contradictions they found. Jake, the main host, he actually said up front he's got this huge personal bias on immigration, cares about it immensely.
Which is interesting context.
Yeah, and he specifically told his co-hosts, call me out on my bullshit. That tells you something about the dynamic, right? They knew they were diving into tricky territory.
Absolutely. And that kind of sets up what we want to do here. Our goal is to sort of synthesize the core conflict they laid out.
Which is?
Basically, this perceived gap between the administration's stated values, fiscal conservatism, being tough on dictators, and what they're actually doing policy-wise. We're going to use the evidence they presented to map that out.
Okay. And the contradictions, they started popping up right away, even before they got to the main event in Venezuela.
Yeah, the fiscal responsibility piece was pretty jarring.
Right. They pointed out how for years the administration and its allies hammered the Democrats on spending, on running up the debt. That was like a central theme.
A core tenet, you could say. Criticizing deficit spending, calling it immoral, destructive, all that.
Exactly. And then
boom. The administration signs off on raising the debt ceiling by $5 trillion.
$5 trillion. It's just a number that's hard to wrap your head around.
It really is. And if you think about the conservative brand, so much of it was built on fiscal prudence. So to see this massive increase, it just pulls the rug out from under that rhetoric.
It suggests maybe the talk about debt was more about political leverage than actual principle.
Well, it certainly looks like being in power changes the perspective on spending, doesn't it? It feels very results-oriented now, whatever the prior arguments were.
Yeah. And that number, $5 trillion. Imagine if the other side had proposed that. The outrage would have been deafening. Government shutdown territory, probably.
No question. So that economic inconsistency is there right at the start. But like you said, the core of their analysis where things got really tangled was Venezuela.
Okay, let's get into that. Because the military situation they described was intense.
So the political setup, this kicks off around July 2024. Nicolas Maduro claims victory in the Venezuelan presidential election.
An election pretty much everyone outside his circle called fraudulent, right? Both internationally and within Venezuela itself.
Absolutely. And predictably, that claim was followed by crackdowns, arresting opponents, consolidating power, the usual authoritarian playbook.
Setting the stage for the U.S. to react.
And react they did. Starting August 2024, the Trump administration orders this really significant naval force just off the coast of Venezuela.
Now, the official reason given was combating drug trafficking.
Right. And look, there's a history there. The State Department has accused Maduro and his people of being involved in narco-trafficking for years. So it's not entirely out of left field.
But the scale of the force, it seemed like maybe more than just drug patrols.
Oh, way more. This is where the details matter, the details the host dug up. We're not talking a couple of Coast Guard cutters here.
No. They listed 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. The USS Gravely, USS Jason Dunham, USS Sampson. These are like major warships, missile defense, anti-surface warfare.
Exactly, heavy hitters.
Yeah.
But the really big piece was the Amphibious Raiding Group, the ARG.
Okay, what's that involve?
An ARG is basically designed for putting troops ashore. It included the USS Iwo Jima, that's a huge amphibious assault ship, looks like a small aircraft carrier.
Wow.
Plus the USS Antonio, a landing platform dock, and the USS Fort Lauderdale. And the key thing, this group was carrying about 4,000 U.S. Marines.
4,000 Marines. Okay, that's not drug interdiction. That's projecting power. That's showing you can land a ground force if you want to.
Precisely. It screams expeditionary capability right onto a potentially hostile shore. And there was more.
Right. They mentioned surveillance aircraft keeping an eye on things.
And a nuclear-powered attack submarine. Then they sent 2 more vessels later, the USS Erie and another sub, the USS Newport, a nuclear sub. That's the ultimate stealth weapon, a huge deterrent.
So the message to Maduro couldn't have been clearer. This wasn't just symbolic. This was a credible military threat parked right outside his door.
Absolutely. And when you consider the massive difference in military capability between the U.S. force and anything Venezuela could muster, you understand Maduro's reaction.
Yeah, the source host mentioned he mobilized his own small warships, some drones,
And claimed he was activating 4.5 million militia volunteers.
which sounded a bit optimistic. The host seems skeptical about the volunteer part in an authoritarian state.
Right. And the videos they mentioned showed these folks weren't exactly professional soldiers. Putting them up against 4,000 battle-ready Marines with naval gunfire support, that's just not a fair fight. It's a recipe for disaster.
And the outcome kind of proved that, didn't it?
It did. Maduro apparently did some initial blustering, some tough talk.
But then pretty quickly changed his tune.
Yeah, he asked for a peace summit. It strongly suggests he looked at that U.S. fleet, understood the seriousness of the threat, and decided negotiation was a better option than confrontation. He blinked.
Okay, so you have this massive military pressure being applied. The U.S. is clearly signaling it sees Maduro as a problem, maybe even an enemy.
Exactly. And that military action becomes the crucial backdrop for the biggest contradiction they explored. This is where the narrative just completely unravels, according to the analysis we watched.
Okay, lay it out.
On one hand, you've got the Trump administration deploying this huge military force, labeling Maduro an authoritarian dictator, an enemy, a drug cartel leader. I think the State Department even upped the reward for his capture to $50 million.
So full-on pressure campaign against the regime.
Right. But at the same time, that very same administration is moving to strip protective immigration status from the people fleeing that exact regime.
Ah, so fighting the dictator.
But refusing refuge to his victims. That's the paradox the source hosts couldn't square. How do you justify both actions simultaneously?
What specific immigration actions did they mention?
They detail the rescinding of temporary protected status, TPS, for Venezuelans, and also several related immigration parole programs were ended.
Okay. And the official reason, there had to be one, right?
Oh yeah, the justification pushed by figures like Christine Nome was frankly bizarre. They claimed Venezuelans seeking protection were actually members of violent criminal gangs, specifically naming Tren Aragua.
Wait, but isn't TPS designed for people fleeing danger? How does the gang member claim fit?
It doesn't. And this is where the fact-checking the hosts did was so important. That justification just falls apart on basic facts. To even qualify for TPS, you have to go through background checks. You are ineligible if you have a serious criminal record, especially felonies. The whole point of the program is to protect people already in the U.S. who can't safely go back home because of war, disaster, or ERI. And this is key. Extraordinary conditions like the chaos under Maduro.
So the claim that TPS recipients are gang members is just factually wrong.
Fundamentally wrong, based on the program's own rules. It seemed like a convenient excuse, not a factual reason.
And they noted this wasn't just about Venezuela, right? This TPS rollback hit other groups, too.
Yes, that was a crucial point. The revocation also affected people from Afghanistan, Haiti, and Nicaragua.
The Afghanistan case sounds particularly difficult.
It really does. They highlighted how many of these were Afghans who had actively helped the U.S. military or government during the war, people now directly threatened by the Taliban.
And their protection was removed?
Apparently it was extended briefly, giving some hope, and then just yanked away. Imagine being in that position.
It's hard to fathom. So for the actual people holding TPS, what happens when it's revoked? What's the immediate impact?
It's devastating, legally and practically. The moment TPS ends, their authorization to work legally in the U.S. vanishes. Poof.
So they can't work anymore?
Nope. And they revert to whatever immigration status they had before TPS, which for many might mean they're now considered undocumented. That makes them immediately vulnerable to being detained and deported.
Back to the very place the government is implicitly saying is dangerous by sending warships.
Precisely. And the human cost they described was stark. People losing their jobs literally the day their work permit expired.
Suddenly unable to pay rent, buy food.
Exactly. Stripped of their ability to legally support themselves, even if they've been here for years, working, paying taxes.
And didn't they mention some confusing court ruling that added to the chaos?
Yeah, that was another layer. Even though TPS officially ended, there was apparently some court decision that meant some existing work permits would remain valid until October the following year.
So TPS is gone, but the work permit's still good. That sounds messy.
Extremely messy. They called it a victory on paper because the underlying legal status was still gone. It caused huge confusion for employers, for immigration officials, and of course for the individuals trying to figure out their rights.
Yeah.
Just chaos.
Yeah, typical of these rapid policy shifts driven by politics, not practicalities.
And the contradictions weren't just military versus humanitarian. They spilled over into economics, too.
Right, you mentioned the military pressure on Maduro, but the economic relationship, that was weird too, wasn't it?
Totally paradoxical. So the administration is hitting the Venezuelan government with heavy economic sanctions, trying to cut off their money. Standard stuff. But the source hosts found evidence, pretty stunning evidence, actually, that the United States is still the #1 importer of Venezuelan oil.
Wait, what? How is that even possible with sanctions?
Loopholes. Exemptions. The U.S. government grants specific licenses, often to major U.S. oil companies, allowing them to continue buying and importing Venezuelan crude oil,
So, we're sanctioning them to hurt their economy.
while simultaneously being their biggest oil customer, which props up their economy.
That makes absolutely no sense.
It's a massive structural inconsistency. It means U.S. policy is effectively working against itself, trying to starve the regime with one hand while feeding it oil money with the other, thanks to corporate exemptions.
That is truly bizarre. And this complex mess is happening alongside changes in how immigration law is actually enforced day to day.
Yes, and this is a really important kind of under-the-radar change they highlighted. A new directive went out to USCIS, that's U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services.
The agency that handles green cards, asylum, TPS renewals, all that.
Exactly. The new rule basically says that if USCIS denies any application could be for a green card, an asylum claim, even a TPS renewal for any reason.
Even just a paperwork mistake, like forgetting to sign something.
Yes, even minor fixable errors. If the application is denied, that denial can, and the implication is will, automatically trigger the applicant being put into deportation proceedings.
Whoa. So you make a mistake on your form, and suddenly you're facing deportation. That sounds like a legal double jeopardy just for applying.
It's incredibly harsh. Think about what automatically put into deportation proceedings means. USCIS issues what's called a Notice to Appear, or NTA, that summons you to immigration court to fight deportation.
Which must be terrifying for someone who thought they were following the rules.
Absolutely. But it also swamps the system. You're taking potentially hundreds of thousands of people, many denied for minor administrative reasons, and dumping them into an immigration court system that's already completely overwhelmed.
Creating even longer delays for everyone else, including genuine asylum cases.
Exactly. It weaponizes bureaucratic process, it turns simple mistakes into potential deportations, and further paralyzes the courts.
Given all this uncertainty and harshness, did the hosts talk about maybe better ways to handle things like TPS reforms?
They did. Jake, the host with the immigration bias, he acknowledged these temporary statuses are kind of flawed. He called TPS a bad Band-Aid because people live in limbo, constantly waiting for the next 18-month renewal, never knowing if it's the last one.
That constant stress must be immense.
Right. So his reform idea was aimed at providing some stability. It was pretty pragmatic.
What was it?
He suggested that if TPS for a specific country gets extended 3 times in a row, which works out to roughly 4 years, given the 18-month cycles, then the people covered by that TPS should become eligible to apply for a pathway to permanent residency, a green card.
That provides an end date to the uncertainty, a light at the end of the tunnel?
Exactly.
But wouldn't critics immediately say that just encourages people to game the system? You know, just wait out the 4 years to get a green card?
Yeah, it's the obvious counter-argument. But the proposal has built-in checks. Remember, TPS recipients have to reapply every 18 months.
And get background checks each time.
Yes. And if you commit a felony while on TPS, you're disqualified immediately. The idea recognizes that if conditions in a country remain terrible for 4 straight years, it's not really temporary anymore, is it?
Good point. 4 years is a long time for something to be supposedly temporary.
Right. So the policy should reflect that reality and offer a path to stability for people who are demonstrably not criminals and have built lives here, instead of just keeping them perpetually under the threat of deportation for political leverage.
Makes logical sense. If the problem isn't temporary, the solution shouldn't be either.
Yep.
How's it going, everybody? It's Jake from the Down the Middle podcast, and I want to take a quick moment to invite you to check out our show, which airs every other Thursday at 8:30 p.m. on YouTube. If you love pro wrestling, you're definitely going to want to check this out. We talk about the latest in pro wrestling.
AEW's pay-per-views are rough, man, and it's obvious, like, Tony Khan is booking for Tony Khan, and it's obvious because Tony Khan has clinical freaking ADHD, but the kind where, like, you can hyper-focus on the thing you love, and he's like, I legitimately want to watch wrestling for 7 hours. It's like, Tony.
Now everyone else does.
hardly
Home.
anybody else
Yeah.
does.
We talk about some of our favorite things in pro wrestling.
One of the best promos ever. Like, can we just say, like, I had fucking goosebumps. And here's the thing, I know it's a work, but I'm watching that and I'm like, I think MJF might have duped somebody.
And we have a hot take here and there too.
Nothing against Riho, it's just like, do you think the audience is fucking stupid? Riho weighs 98 pounds.
The vast majority of great moments in professional wrestling have nothing to do with the move. Don't get me wrong, the moves are part of it. Cena's like, I don't even remember how I won. Everybody remembers this.
But the best part about our show is that you are part of the conversation. So check out the show and join in the fun.
All right, we're back. Before we hit that State Department advisory, which is kind of the smoking gun here, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned earlier, the dynamic between the hosts of the source material.
Oh, yeah, the Jake and Eric guys, it wasn't just dry policy talk, was it?
Not at all.
Oh.
And that actually helped, I think. They had this moment where they went completely off topic.
I remember that. They started talking about the TV show Yellowstone, right?
Yeah, and then the prequel, 1883, and somehow that morphed into a discussion about the Jonas Brothers' musical career. It was totally random.
And Jake called himself the obnoxious dork that prints out all the notes.
Well, while Eric was apparently the more entertaining one, it was this little moment of self-awareness and, frankly, humor.
Why do you think that matters in this context?
Because when you're dealing with stuff, this heavy military deployments, deportation threats, political hypocrisy, that human element, that little bit of levity makes it bearable. It shows they're real people trying to make sense of it, not just pundits reading talking points. It actually adds credibility, strangely enough.
Yeah, I see that. Grounds the really serious stuff. And the next piece of evidence they brought up was incredibly serious.
The State Department travel advisory for Venezuela. This is where the administration's contradictory stance becomes almost impossible to defend based on their analysis.
Okay, so what was the key point here?
The timing and the content. The U.S. Department of State reissued its travel warning for Venezuela after the administration had already canceled PPS for Venezuelans. I think the date was May 12, 2025.
And what level was the advisory?
Level 4, the highest possible. It basically means do not travel. Full stop.
And the reasons given.
It's a grim list. High risk of wrongful detention, torture, terrorism, rampant crime, civil unrest, collapsing health infrastructure. Basically a failed state environment.
And critically, the U.S. can't even help its own citizens if they get into trouble there, right?
Exactly. The advisory explicitly states the U.S. has no embassy, no consular services available since March 2019. If an American goes there and gets arrested or kidnapped, they are completely on their own.
Okay, that's already bad. But wasn't there one specific detail in that advisory that was just jaw-dropping?
Yes. This is the part that really hammers the point home. The State Department advises any U.S. citizen who must travel there to take extraordinary precautions beforehand.
Like what?
Prepare a will, designate power of attorney, and get this, develop a proof-of-life protocol with their family members before they leave.
A proof-of-life protocol,
Aye.
that's language you use for hostage negotiators, for people going into active war zones?
Precisely. It's an admission by the U.S. government itself that Venezuela is so dangerous, so unstable, that American citizens entering the country face a real risk of being disappeared, detained without cause, or worse, and need contingency plans for proving they're still alive if captured.
So let's connect the dots here, like the hosts did.
Okay. The State Department, the diplomatic arm of the government, says Venezuela is a level 4 hellhole where Americans need proof-of-life plans.
While the immigration arm of the same government is simultaneously canceling protective status for Venezuelans, claiming it's safe enough for them to be deported back there.
It's not just inconsistent. It's fundamentally incoherent. Two parts of the same administration offering completely opposite assessments of the safety and stability of the exact same country at the exact same time.
You can't logically hold both positions. It's either dangerous or it's not.
Exactly. And the State Department's own official warning seemed to provide the definitive answer. It is dangerous. Which makes the KPS decision look purely political, not based on actual conditions on the ground. That was the factual slam dunk in their argument.
Okay, so having established that factual contradiction with the travel advisory, the hosts then did something pretty interesting, kind of modern.
Yeah, they turned to AI to sort of stress test the administration's actions against his own past rhetoric.
Using Perplexity.ai and ChatGPT, right?
To systematically compare current policies with things Trump had said, especially criticizing opponents like Biden or Democrats for similar things.
So first, the perplexity query. What did they ask it?
It was a very direct question, basically mirroring their core argument. How can the U.S. logically eliminate TPS status for Venezuela when they were pursuing military action against the country's leader?
And what did the AI conclude?
Perplexity apparently came back saying the policy is logically inconsistent when you measure it against standard humanitarian principles and foreign policy norms.
So the AI agreed with their assessment.
Pretty much. It noted that the reasons given for ending TPS, the gang stuff, the supposed magnet effect, those aren't the same as determining that Venezuela is actually safe to return to, which is the legal standard you're supposed to meet.
Yeah.
So the AI basically validated their central point about the inconsistency.
Okay, then they moved on to ChatGPT for hypocrisy simulations. This sounds fun.
It was insightful, actually. They tried to get ChatGPT to predict how Trump might react if his political opponents did things that he himself had done.
Scenario 1 involved that plane, right? The gift from Qatar.
Exactly. Trump accepted a plane as a gift from Qatar while president. So they asked ChatGPT, what would Trump likely say if Joe Biden had accepted that same plane?
And the simulated reaction was...
Predictable, if you follow his style. Immediate accusations Biden's totally compromised, it's pure corruption, he's selling out America, and it even threw in references to the emoluments clause criticisms Trump himself faced.
Did they generate like a mock social media post?
They did. It was spot on, apparently. Something like, look at Joe Biden just accepted a plane. Totally illegal, totally corrupt. They own him now. America last, Qatar first. Total double standard. Complete with the signature all caps emphasis.
Wow, so the AI nailed the rhetorical style. What does that simulation show, really?
It shows how political attacks often work now. The specific accusations, corruption, selling out their, pre-packaged weapons. It doesn't matter who does the action. The attack language is ready to go. Just change the target's name. It's purely instrumental.
Okay, what was the second simulation?
This one was about executive power, specifically challenging nationwide injunctions.
Ah, those court orders that block a president's policy across the whole country? Trump hated those when judges used them against his policies, like the travel bans.
Bitterly hated them. So the simulation asked, what if Biden challenged the constitutionality of those injunctions? How would Trump react?
Let me guess. Accusations of tyranny.
Pretty much. The simulation predicted Trump would say Biden wants total control, is trying to get rid of checks and balances, and it's total hypocrisy because Democrats cheered when injunctions blocked Trump.
But the deep irony here, which the hosts pointed out,
is that it was the Trump administration itself that took the case to the Supreme Court that ultimately did severely limit or effectively end those broad nationwide injunctions.
Right. So he fought against them when they hurt him. Then his administration effectively got rid of them.
Total reversal. And the consequence of that Supreme Court ruling is huge and maybe not fully appreciated.
Explain that impact again before the ruling.
Before, if a single federal judge found an executive order unconstitutional, say a travel ban, or that flag-burning order, we'll get to their ruling, could pause the policy nationwide while the case went up through the courts. It was a powerful effect.
And now?
Now, that broad protection is gone. If the president issues an order, even if it seems blatantly unconstitutional, it generally stays in effect everywhere, unless a specific person or group sues the government and wins a temporary restraining order, TTRO, just for themselves or their specific case.
So it doesn't stop the policy for everyone else?
Nope. The unconstitutional order can keep being enforced against others while litigation slowly grinds along. It massively shifts power to the executive branch, letting them push policies through until challenged individually, case by case.
Okay, so beyond the AI simulations, the hosts also just did some straightforward fact-checking on other controversial administration actions they were discussing.
Right, moving beyond Venezuela and hypocrisy simulations to other examples. They brought up the whole Epstein list situation.
Ah, yes, the documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. What was the point there?
The starting point was Trump's campaign promised to release everything. Total transparency.
Did that happen?
Well, initially, Pam Bondi, speaking for the administration, claimed it had all been released. But then later, there was an admission, apparently, that no, there was actually more stuff that hadn't been released.
Okay, so why wasn't it released? What was the new excuse?
The justification shifted. Now it was about protecting the victims, keeping their names confidential. A humanitarian reason.
And the hosts pushed back on that.
Immediately. They pointed out the obvious solution. Redaction. It's standard practice in releasing sensitive documents. You black out the victims' names and identifying details, and you release the rest. Problem solved.
So if redaction could protect victims, why not release the rest?
Exactly. Their point was that the failure to use redaction suggested the real reason for withholding the documents probably wasn't protecting victims, but maybe protecting powerful people named in them. Politics over transparency.
They mentioned some wilder theories too, didn't they?
Yeah, they touched on the sort of tinfoil hat idea that releasing the full list would somehow take down 3/4 of our government. They didn't endorse it, obviously.
But used it to illustrate the point.
Right, to show how the lack of transparency, combined with an easily debunked official excuse, just breeds suspicion and extreme theories about what's really being hidden.
Oh, okay. What else? The flag or burning order came up too.
Yes. Trump signed an executive order calling for jail time for people who burn the U.S. flag.
Which sounds constitutionally dubious.
It's not dubious, it's blatantly unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has ruled multiple times that burning the flag, if it's your own property, is protected political expression under the First Amendment. The president can't just override the Constitution with an executive order.
But connect this back to what you said about nationwide injunctions being gone. What's the practical danger here?
The danger is that, even though the order is unconstitutional on its face, without a nationwide injunction to immediately block it, the government can still potentially enforce it until someone gets arrested, sues, and wins their individual case.
So people could actually be detained under an unconstitutional order?
In theory, yes, in the interim. And the source host pointed out that this wasn't just theoretical. They mentioned a military veteran was apparently detained for protesting the order right after it was signed.
Wow. So the lack of that judicial check allows unconstitutional actions to have real-world impact, even if temporary.
Exactly. The mechanism for immediate broad protection is gone.
Okay. Was there a final point of debate or fact-checking they covered?
Yeah, they wrapped up with a discussion on immigration enforcement more broadly, acknowledging the need to go after actual criminals crossing the border.
But criticizing some of the methods or priorities.
Right. One host, while agreeing on targeting criminals, specifically called out the project to paint sections of the border wall black.
My, what was the issue with that?
He called it a stupid and obscene waste of money. Apparently, testing showed the black paint made the wall dangerously hot to touch, suggesting the choice was purely about making it look intimidating, an aesthetic choice, rather than anything practical or effective.
So performative cruelty over sensible policy.
That seemed to be the implication. The overall point was that effective enforcement doesn't require policies that are unconstitutional, inhumane, or just pointlessly wasteful and theatrical. There's a line between strong enforcement and counterproductive cruelty or overreach.
A line that seems frequently blurred in these debates.
So if we pull all this together, what's the main takeaway for you, the listener, from this analysis we watched?
I think it demonstrates a really clear pattern in our politics right now.
Which is?
That the rhetoric, whether it's about saving money or fighting dictators or upholding the law, it's often incredibly flexible. It shifts dramatically depending on who's in power and what serves their immediate goals.
Creating these huge gaps, these contradictions, like the Venezuela situation. Like sending warships against Maduro while telling his victims it's safe to go home. The best way to make sense of that isn't to pick a side, but to step back, look at the facts consistently, and apply critical thinking no matter which party is involved.
That whiplash between words and actions is definitely exhausting to follow, but maybe it's part of something bigger.
What do you mean?
Well, you hear historians talk about these long cycles, right? Like 80 to 100-year patterns in American history, Strauss-Howe generational theory, stuff like that.
Okay, yeah. The idea of different turnings or eras.
Right. And according to that kind of thinking, the U.S. is supposedly deep into a crisis period right now, sometimes called a political winter.
Characterized by polarization, institutional breakdown, loss of trust. Sound familiar?
Exactly. It feels very much like where we are. But the theory also predicts these crisis periods eventually end. They resolve usually around the 80-year mark.
Which would put the end of this current one, late 2020s, around 2028 to 2030 maybe?
That's the projection. So it raises this provocative question. Is all the extremism we're seeing now, all the inconsistency, the chaos, is it just the final thrashing about before the cycle turns?
Could the sheer exhaustion with the current state of politics actually pave the way for something completely different? Maybe a return to the center, a more unifying figure emerging precisely because people are just tired of the conflict.
Is the pendulum about to swing back hard because it's swung so far out? It's definitely something to think about based on those historical patterns.
The fascinating thought to end on.
Indeed. Well, that's our look at the analysis presented in that Average Intelligence episode. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back soon to sift through more source material. Until then, keep digging for the truth.
We choose to go to the moon and dissipate and do the other things.
Weird.
You know, someone said that frickin' Panera's Pepsi's taste funny.
Better.
No, I mean,
What?